please. I just need someone to look at me. I have no insurance, but my chest, something is wrong." The receptionist did not even lift her eyes. "Sir, take a seat. We will call you when we can." He lowered himself into a cold plastic chair. The fluorescent lights buzzed above him. The smell of antiseptic hung thick in the air. No one looked his way. Then, a hand rested gently on his shoulder. A woman in a cleaning uniform held out a bottle of water and whispered, "They will see you, sir. Just hold on." And that single moment of kindness from the lowest paid worker in the building, it was about to expose everything rotten inside these walls and change both of their lives in ways neither of them could have imagined. Clarence Whitfield stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse in downtown Richmond. 14 stories below the city moved in its usual rhythm. Cars lined up at traffic lights, people crossed streets without looking up. And there, sitting on the edge of the skyline like a crown jewel, was Whitfield Memorial Hospital. His name was etched across the front of that building in letters tall enough to read from a mile away. He built that hospital 9 years ago, poured over $200 million into it. State-of-the-art equipment, the best doctors money could recruit. A place where people were supposed to be healed. A place where people were supposed to be safe. His wife Lorraine was not safe. 3 years ago, Lorraine went in for a routine gallbladder surgery. Everything went fine. The surgeon said it was textbook. She was moved to recovery, smiling, asking Clarence to bring her favorite ginger tea from home. He kissed her forehead and told her he would be back in an hour. He never got that hour back. While he was gone, Lorraine began feeling a deep, sharp pain in her abdomen. She pressed the call button. A nurse came in, checked her chart, and told her it was normal post-surgical discomfort. Lorraine said it was not normal. She said something felt wrong inside her body. The nurse noted in the file, "Patient is anxious and overly sensitive to post-operative pain." Lorraine pressed the button again 40 minutes later. This time, nobody came for 20 minutes. When they did, they gave her a mild painkiller and told her to rest. 6 hours after her surgery, Lorraine Whitfield died from internal bleeding. A blood vessel had been nicked during the procedure. It was small enough to miss on the operating table, but large enough to kill her while she lay in a hospital bed pressing a call button that nobody took seriously. Clarence held her hand as it went cold. He remembered the exact moment, the way her fingers relaxed, the way the warmth drained out of her skin like water, leaving a cracked glass. He sat there for a long time after holding a hand that could no longer hold him back. What haunted him was not just the medical error. Errors happen. What haunted him was what he discovered afterward. He had hired an independent review team to investigate. What they found shook him to his core. There is a pattern in American healthcare that researchers call diagnostic dismissal. It happens when a patient reports symptoms and the medical staff minimizes or ignores them. Studies show it happens far more often to women, and it happens even more often to Black women. Their pain is rated lower. Their concerns are documented as anxiety. Their bodies are not believed. Lorraine was a Black woman. Lorraine was not believed. Clarence read every study he could find. He sat in his office for weeks reading research papers, medical journals, case reports. And the more he read, the more he realized that what happened to Lorraine was not an accident. It was a system. A quiet, invisible system that treated some patients like people and others like problems to manage. He tried to fix it from the top. He brought in consultants. He rewrote policies. He held meetings with the hospital board. And for a while, the numbers looked better on paper. But then the quarterly report started telling a different story. Patient satisfaction scores dropped 3 quarters in a row. Complaints about wait times went up. Complaints about staff attitude went up. The board told him it was a staffing issue. Budget constraints, burnout, the usual explanations wrapped in the usual language. Clarence did not buy it. He had heard polished explanations before. He had watched executives turn problems into presentations. He knew how easy it was to make ugly numbers look reasonable when you controlled the narrative. He picked up his phone and called Calvin Reeves. Calvin had been his assistant for 12 years. The only person Clarence trusted without hesitation. "Calvin, I need you here tonight. What's going on?" I'm going into the hospital. Not as the owner, not as Clarence Whitfield. He paused, looked out the window one more time at the building that carried his name. I'm going in as a nobody, and I need you to help me disappear. Calvin arrived at the penthouse within the hour. He found Clarence in the bedroom, standing in front of the closet, pulling out clothes he had not worn in decades. Old jeans, a faded work jacket with a broken zipper, a pair of scuffed boots that had belonged to his father. Calvin leaned against the doorframe and watched. He did not like this. Sir, your blood pressure has been high all month. Dr. Abrams told you to reduce stress. This is the opposite of reducing stress. Clarence pulled a wool beanie over his head and looked at himself in the mirror. The transformation was striking. Without the tailored suit, without the gold watch, without the posture of a man who owned rooms before he entered them, Clarence looked like someone the world had forgotten. Just an older man, tired, worn down. How do I look? He asked. Calvin shook his head. Like someone who needs help. Good, that's the point. They went over the plan. Clarence would check into the emergency room at Whitfield Memorial complaining of chest pains. He would give a false name. Eugene. No last name. No insurance. No emergency contact. No identification. Just a sick old man walking in off the street. Now here is something most people do not know. In America, there is a federal law called EMTALA, the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act. It requires every hospital that accepts Medicare funding to screen and stabilize any patient who comes to the emergency room regardless of their ability to pay. That is the law. On paper, every patient is equal. But paper and reality are two very different things. Studies have shown that patients without insurance wait longer, receive fewer tests, and are discharged faster than patients with private coverage. The law says you must be treated. It does not say you must be treated well. That was exactly what Clarence wanted to test. Calvin drove him to the hospital in a plain sedan. No driver, no town car. They parked in the public lot 3 blocks away and walked. The evening air was sharp. December in Richmond carried a bite that got into your bones. Clarence's hands trembled as he buttoned the jacket. Calvin noticed. You okay? I'm fine. Your hands are shaking. Clarence looked down at his fingers. He was not sure if it was the cold or something else. Something deeper. Fear, maybe. The fear of finding out that the building he created had become the very thing that killed his wife. They reached the entrance. Calvin stopped. Clarence kept walking. At the edge of the parking lot, Clarence turned back. Stay close. Keep your phone on. If I text you the word Lorraine, come get me. No questions. Calvin nodded. His jaw was tight. He did not say what he was thinking, which was that this was a terrible idea and that Clarence was 68 years old with a heart condition walking into a hospital not as a patient who would be prioritized, but as someone the system was, designed to overlook. Clarence turned and walked toward the automatic doors. They slid open with a soft hiss. The fluorescent light poured over him like cold water. The smell hit him first. Antiseptic. Stale coffee. The faint metallic scent of something he could not name, but recognized from 3 years ago. He stepped inside, and just like that, Clarence Whitfield ceased to exist. He was Eugene now. A man with no name that mattered, no money that showed, and no one in the world waiting for him. The emergency room was a world unto itself. Rows of blue plastic chairs bolted to the floor, most of them occupied. A television mounted high on the wall played the news with the sound off. Somewhere to the left, a child was crying, not screaming, just a low, exhausted whimper, the kind that meant the child had been crying for a long time and no longer had the energy for volume. Clarence walked to the front desk. A woman sat behind the glass partition. She was typing something. She did not look up. He waited. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Excuse me, he said. His voice came out quieter than he intended. She still did not look up. Sign in on the clipboard. Someone will be with you. I'm having chest pains. That made her glance up. Briefly. She looked at his clothes. The worn jacket. The old boots. Her eyes moved back to her screen. Nam Eugene. Last name just Eugene. Insurance. I don't have insurance. The shift was immediate, not dramatic, not rude exactly. But something changed in the temperature of the interaction. Her voice flattened. Her eyes drifted past his shoulder. Have a seat over there. Someone will call you. Clarence sat down. The chair was hard and cold. He folded his hands in his lap and waited. 45 minutes passed. He watched the room. A young woman came in with a swollen ankle. She had an insurance card. She was called within 15 minutes. A man in a business suit arrived holding his wrist. He gave his insurance information and was taken back almost immediately. Clarence sat, and sat, and sat. Across from him, a young mother held a little girl on her lap. The child's forehead was slick with sweat, her cheeks flushed red. The mother rocked her gently, whispering things Clarence could not hear. Her eyes were rimmed with red. She had been crying, but she was holding it together. Barely. She had been there before Clarence arrived. She was still waiting. In the American healthcare system, the average emergency room wait time for an uninsured patient is more than twice as long as for someone with private insurance. This is not a theory. This is not something that happens in rare cases. This is the daily reality for millions of people across the country. They sit in plastic chairs under buzzing lights, and they wait because the system processes people not by how sick they are, but by how they are covered. Clarence felt a tightness in his chest. At first, he thought it was anger, the slow burn of watching his own hospital treat people this way. But then the tightness sharpened. It moved from his chest into his left shoulder. His breathing got shallow. He gripped the armrest of the chair, hard. This was not acting anymore. The stress, the cold walk, the hour of sitting in a hard chair, the weight of everything he was seeing it had triggered something real. His heart was pounding. Not fast, but irregular, like it was skipping beats, like it could not find its rhythm. He closed his eyes and took a slow breath. Then another. The tightness did not go away. It sat there heavy, like a stone pressing against the inside of his ribs. He was 68 years old. He had high blood pressure, and he was sitting in an emergency room where no one had checked on him for nearly an hour. For the first time since he walked through those doors, Clarence Whitfield was afraid. His name was finally called after 1 hour and 12 minutes. A nurse led him down a narrow hallway into a small examination room. The nurse's name tag read Brenda Hayes. Brenda was efficient. She wrapped the blood pressure cuff around his arm, squeezed the bulb, watched the gauge. She typed something into the computer. She did not make eye contact. "What brings you in tonight?" she asked. Her voice was flat, professional but flat. Like she had asked that question 1,000 times and stopped listening to the answer somewhere around number 500. "Chest pains," Clarence said. "Started about an hour ago. Tightness, left side, goes into my shoulder." She typed, did not look up. "Any history of heart problems, high blood pressure. I take medication for it." "Which medication? I don't remember the name." She paused her typing for just a moment. A small pause, but Clarence caught it. It was the pause of judgment. The pause that said this man does not even know what medication he takes. "Okay, the doctor will be in to see you shortly. You can wait here." "Is this serious?" Clarence asked. "Should I be worried?" Brenda was already at the door. She turned halfway. "The doctor will tell you. Just wait here." The door closed. Clarence looked around the room. It was small. The overhead light flickered every few seconds, a faint strobe that made the walls feel like they were breathing. The bed was old. The sheet had a yellowish stain near the edge that someone had tried to bleach out but had not quite managed. A ceiling fan turned slowly overhead, making a low rhythmic creak with each rotation. This was not the room they put priority patients in. Clarence had toured every floor of this hospital. He knew the private rooms on the 4th floor with their wide windows and fresh flowers. He knew the semi-private suites with their adjustable beds and personal television screens. This room was none of those things. This was the room for people who did not matter enough to put somewhere better. There is a concept in healthcare that researchers call triage bias. It is the tendency for medical staff to unconsciously assess the severity of a patient's condition based not on symptoms alone, but on appearance, race, or insurance status. Studies have found that black patients are 40% more likely to have their pain underestimated compared to white patients presenting with identical symptoms. It is not always intentional. Sometimes it is just a habit, a pattern worn so deep into the system that the people inside it cannot even see it anymore. Clarence sat on the edge of the bed, the paper cover crinkled under his weight. Outside the door he could hear voices. Laughter. Someone telling a story about their weekend. The sound of a vending machine dispensing a can of something. He was alone. In a room that smelled like old disinfectant and recycled air. In a hospital with his name on the front. And he thought about Lorraine. He thought about whether she sat in a room like this. Whether she heard laughter on the other side of the door while she pressed the call button and nobody came. Whether she felt this same heaviness in her chest. This same silence. The fluorescent light flickered again. The ceiling fan creaked, and Clarence Whitfield sat very still in a room that did not know who he was and waited for someone to care. A knock on the door. Soft, 2 taps. Clarence opened his eyes. The door was already half open, but the woman standing in the hallway did not walk in. She waited. She had a cleaning cart behind her, a mop in one hand, and a spray bottle tucked under her arm. Her uniform was pale blue, faded from too many washes. Her name tag read Denise. "Excuse me, sir. I need to clean the room. Is that okay?" Clarence nodded. He was still sitting on the edge of the bed, the thin paper sheet crinkling beneath him. He had not moved in over an hour. Denise pushed her cart inside and started with the floor near the door. She worked quietly, methodical. The mop moved in slow, even strokes. She was not rushing. She was not cutting corners. She was just doing her job the way someone does when they take pride in work that nobody notices. She glanced at him, paused. "You don't have a blanket." Clarence looked down. She was right. The bed had a sheet, no blanket. He had not thought to ask for one. He was not sure who to ask or if anyone would care enough to bring one. Denise leaned her mop against the cart and walked out of the room. She was gone for less than 2 minutes. When she came back, she was carrying a folded blanket. White, warm. She shook it open and draped it across his legs, tucking the edges gently around his feet. "You look cold, sir. This should help." Her voice was soft. A little rough around the edges, like someone who had been talking and working and moving all day and was now running on whatever energy she had left. But there was kindness in it, not the performative kind. Not the kind that came with a clipboard and a patient satisfaction survey. Just plain, ordinary kindness. The kind that costs nothing and means everything. Clarence pulled the blanket up to his chest. It was warm. That small warmth broke something in him, not visibly. He did not cry or speak, but something behind his ribs loosened just a fraction. Like a fist that had been clenched for hours, finally relaxing one finger. "Thank you," he said. His voice cracked slightly. Denise nodded and went back to mopping. But she did not go silent. She talked. Not loud, not prying, just easy conversation. "You been waiting long, since last night." That's too long. They get backed up on night shifts. "You here alone?" "Yes." "No family coming?" "No." She did not push. She just let the silence sit for a moment, then filled it gently. "Well, at least the room is clean now." "That's something right." He almost smiled. She finished the floor and moved to the small sink in the corner. As she wiped it down, she asked, "You eat anything today?" Clarence shook his head. He had not eaten since yesterday afternoon. His stomach had stopped growling hours ago. It had given up. Denise stopped wiping. She looked at him, really looked at him, not the way the receptionist had looked through him, not the way Brenda had glanced past him. Denise looked at him the way you look at someone when you actually see them. "Hold on," she said. "I'll be right back." She left the room. 10 minutes passed. Clarence heard her cart rolling down the hallway, then silence, then footsteps coming back. She walked in carrying a small plastic container, the kind you buy at a dollar store. The lid was scratched, and the bottom had a strip of masking tape with the letters D. Patterson written in black marker. She set it on the bedside table and opened it. Rice, chicken, a few pieces of steamed broccoli. Steam rose from the container, thin and slow. "It's just rice and chicken," she said. "But it's warm." Clarence looked at the food. This was not hospital food. This was not from the cafeteria. This was her dinner. The meal she had packed at home that morning, carried on the bus, stored in the break room refrigerator, and heated up for herself, because she had a long shift ahead, and this was all she had. And she was giving half of it to a stranger. He took the container with both hands. The plastic was warm against his palms. He ate slowly. The rice was soft. The chicken had been seasoned with garlic, and something else he could not name, but tasted like home. Like someone's kitchen. Like care. Denise went back to her cart. She did not watch him eat. She gave him that dignity. She just wiped down the windowsill, adjusted the blinds, so the hallway light would not bother him, and quietly finished her work. When she left, she paused at the door. "You need anything else, sir, you press that button. But if nobody comes, you look for me. I'm on this floor till 6. The door closed softly behind her. Clarence sat with the empty container in his hands. He turned it over. "Read the tape. D. Patterson." Written in the handwriting of someone who labels things, because sharing a break room means your food might disappear if you do not. He set the container down, pulled the blanket tighter, and for the first time since he walked through those doors, Clarence did not feel invisible. The hospital went quiet around 11. Not silent. Hospitals are never silent. But the daytime noise, the ringing phones, the footsteps, the overhead pages, all of that faded into a lower register. What remained was the hum, machines, ventilation, the occasional beep of a monitor somewhere down the hall. Clarence could not sleep. His chest still ached, a dull pressure that came and went, but it was not the pain keeping him awake. It was what he could see through the half-open door of his room. The nurse's station was visible from his bed if he turned his head to the right. 2 nurses sat behind the counter. One was scrolling through her phone, thumb moving in that slow, mindless rhythm of someone who was not looking for anything in particular. The other had her head down, either reading or dozing. The call light board above them blinked. Room 312, room 308, room 315, 3 lights, then 4. Nobody moved. Down the hallway, Clarence heard a voice. Thin, old. "Hello. Can someone come, please? Hello." The voice called 3 times. The third time, it was barely a whisper. Nobody went. Clarence's hands tightened on the blanket. He thought about getting up, walking to the nurse's station himself, telling them a patient needed help. But he was Eugene, a nobody, a man without insurance, without a name that mattered. What authority did he have in this place? He stayed in bed, and he listened. Around midnight, a commotion near the main entrance. Clarence could not see it, but he could hear it. A security guard's voice. Firm. "Sir, you can't stay here. This is not a shelter. You need to leave." Another voice. Quieter. "It's cold outside. Please. I just need to sit somewhere warm." "I understand, but this is hospital property. You need to go." The sound of shuffling feet. A door opening. Cold air rushing in for a moment. Then the door closed again, and the lobby went back to being empty and warm for everyone except the man who needed it most. Clarence stared at the ceiling. He was breathing hard. Not from pain, from anger. The kind of anger that does not shout, it just sits in your stomach and burns. He reached for his phone. Calvin had given him a simple prepaid phone for the night. No apps, no contacts except one. He typed a message with 2 thumbs the way someone types who is not used to small keyboards. "This is worse than I thought." Calvin's reply came in 30 seconds. "Do you want me to come get you?" Clarence stared at the screen. He typed, "Not yet." He put the phone down and turned his head back toward the hallway. That is when he saw her. Denise was still here. Her shift should have been over hours ago. But there she was, pushing her cart slowly down the far end of the corridor. She stopped outside room 312, the room where the call light had been blinking. She knocked, went inside. A minute later, Clarence heard a voice, the same thin old voice from before. But this time it was not calling for help. It was saying, "Thank you, dear." Denise came out, adjusted something on her cart, and moved to the next room. Through the open door, Clarence watched her lean over a sleeping patient and gently shift the pillow that had slid to one side. The patient did not wake up. Denise did not need them to. She passed a spilled cup of water in the hallway. It had been there for at least an hour. Clarence had seen a nurse step around it twice. Denise stopped, pulled a rag from her cart, knelt down, and wiped it up. Then she kept walking. There is a term used in healthcare called compassion fatigue. It describes what happens when medical workers are exposed to suffering for so long that their ability to empathize begins to shut down. They stop seeing patients as people. They start seeing them as tasks. It is real. It is documented. And it is a serious problem in hospitals across the country. But here is the thing about compassion fatigue. It is supposed to affect everyone who works in a high-stress environment. Every nurse, every doctor, every aide, and every cleaning lady. Denise had been working in this hospital for 8 years. She worked a second job during the day. She had her own problems at home, her own pain, her own exhaustion. By every measure, she had more reason to be burnt out than anyone else in the building. And yet, she was the only one still showing up. Not because it was in her job description. It was not. Cleaning staff are not responsible for adjusting pillows or answering call lights or checking on elderly patients. Denise did those things because she chose to. Because somewhere inside her, the part that sees other people as human beings had not gone numb. Clarence watched her disappear around the corner. The hallway went still again. The call lights kept blinking. The nurses kept sitting. He pulled the blanket up to his chin, the blanket Denise had brought him, and he lay there in the dark staring at the ceiling of a hospital that carried his name but had lost its soul. Morning came gray and slow. The overhead lights in the hallway clicked on at 6 one by one, like a building waking up section by section. Clarence had slept in fragments, 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there. Each time he woke, the ache in his chest reminded him where he was. A knock at the door, different from Denise's, louder, sharper, a single rap, and the door swung open before Clarence could respond. Dr. Raymond Cross walked in. He was tall, clean-shaven, white coat pressed, stethoscope draped perfectly around his neck, not too tight, not too loose, the way doctors in magazines wore theirs. He carried a tablet in one hand and a coffee in the other. He set the coffee on the counter, not the bedside table. A small thing, but it said something. The coffee was his. This was his space. Clarence was just passing through. "Good morning. I'm Dr. Cross. I'll be handling your case today." He glanced at the tablet screen. His eyes scanned. Clarence watched them move, left to right, top to bottom. The way someone reads, when they already know what they are going to say before they finish reading. "Eugene, is that right?" "Yes, sir." "So you came in last night with chest pains. We ran some blood work. Vitals looked a little elevated, but nothing that points to an acute cardiac event. Your EKG showed some irregularities, but nothing immediately dangerous." He said all of this without looking up. Fast, efficient, like a man ticking items off a checklist. "What kind of irregularities?" Clarence asked. Cross glanced at him, briefly. "Some variation in your heart rhythm. Could be stress-related. Could be age-related. It's worth following up with a primary care physician." "What does my blood work say? Anything else I should know?" "Nothing alarming. Some markers were slightly elevated, but within a range we see in men your age. Again, something to discuss with your regular doctor." Clarence leaned forward. "I don't have a regular doctor. I told the nurse last night. I don't have insurance." There it was. The pause. Not long. Maybe 1 second. But in that 1 second, something shifted in the room. It was not that Cross became rude. He did not raise his voice or roll his eyes. It was subtler than that. It was the way his posture adjusted, the way his weight shifted toward the door. The way the conversation went from "might take 5 minutes" to "will take 2. There are community health clinics in the Richmond area that offer services on a sliding scale. We can get you a referral list before you're discharged. How long is the wait at those clinics? Cross paused again. This time he looked at Clarence. Really looked. And for a moment, Clarence thought the man might say something honest, something real, something like, "The wait is long, and I'm sorry, and the system isn't built for people like you." But he did not say that. "It depends on the clinic. Some have availability within a few weeks. You should call ahead." Now, here is what Dr. Cross did not say. He did not say that the average wait time at a community health clinic in Virginia for a new patient without insurance is between 3 and 6 months. He did not say that many of those clinics are understaffed and underfunded and turn away patients every single day. He did not say that telling a 68-year-old man with heart rhythm irregularities to call ahead and follow up is essentially the same as telling him to figure it out on his own. This is what healthcare professionals call the referral gap. It is the space between being technically discharged with a plan and actually receiving the care you need. On paper, the patient was seen. On paper, a referral was made. On paper, everything was done correctly. But in reality, the patient walks out the door with a piece of paper and a prayer. It is legal. It is standard practice. And it happens thousands of times a day in hospitals across America. The system does not deny you care. It just makes care so difficult to access that the denial happens on its own quietly, without anyone having to take responsibility for it. Cross finished, typing his notes. He tucked the tablet under his arm, picked up his coffee, and moved toward the door. Everything about the visit had been correct. He had introduced himself. He had reviewed the chart. He had explained the results. He had offered a follow-up option. If you had filmed the entire interaction and shown it to a medical review board, not a single thing would have been flagged. And that was the problem. Everything was right, and nothing was right. "Dr. Clarence," said just before Cross reached the door. Cross turned, half-turned. "Thank you for your time," Clarence said it quietly. Not sarcastically, not angrily, just quietly. The way you thank someone when you know the transaction is over, and nothing you say will change the outcome. Cross nodded. "Take care of yourself, Eugene," and he was gone. Clarence sat on the bed. A folded piece of paper lay on the blanket beside him. The referral list. He picked it up. 3 clinic names, 3 addresses, 3 phone numbers. Printed in small type on a half sheet of paper that had been photocopied so many times the text was beginning to blur. He folded it carefully, twice, put it in the pocket of his old jacket, and sat there in a room that smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee in a hospital, with his name on the building, holding a list of places he would never need, but that millions of people depended on as their last hope. The difference between Dr. Cross and the woman who mopped his floor was not education. It was not training. It was not intelligence. It was something simpler than all of those things and harder to teach. It was the difference between doing your job and seeing the person in front of you. The door opened just after noon. Denise walked in with her cart mop already in hand. She looked at Clarence and stopped. "Oh, you're still here." She said it with genuine surprise. Not judgment. "They haven't discharged you yet." "Not yet." She shook her head. "Lord, they move slow when they want to." She parked her cart by the door and got to work. Same routine. Same steady rhythm. Mop first, sink second, windowsill third. "How are you feeling today?" she asked, not looking up. The question came naturally, like she was continuing a conversation they had never stopped having. "Better. A little. Good. You look better. You got some color back." Clarence watched her work. There was something calming about the way she moved. No wasted motion. No rush. She had done this 1,000 times, and she did it with the same care every time. "You work here long?" he asked. 8 years this March." She wrung the mop into the bucket. The water came out gray. "Started right after my son turned 8. Needed the insurance. The hospital insurance is good. For me, yeah. Covers the basics. Dental, vision, the important stuff. But it's just for employees. Doesn't cover dependents." She said it matter of fact. No bitterness. Just a statement. The same way someone would say the bus comes at 7:15. "Your son doesn't have coverage." Denise paused. She leaned the mop against the wall and turned toward him. She did not sit down. She was still on the clock. But she gave him her attention. "My son Tyrone, he's 16. Smart kid. Really smart. Wants to be an engineer. He talks about building bridges. Not the regular kind, the big ones. The kind that go over rivers and canyons. She smiled when she said this. A real smile. The kind that reaches the eyes, but also carries weight behind it. He was born with sickle cell disease. She said it simply. No dramatic pause. No lowering of her voice. Just the fact. Like she had said it so many times that the words had worn smooth. Sickle cell disease is a genetic blood disorder that affects approximately 100,000 Americans. It occurs most commonly in people of African descent. What happens is this. Normal red blood cells are round and flexible. They move easily through blood vessels carrying oxygen throughout the body, but in sickle cell disease some of those red blood cells become hard and shaped like a crescent, like a sickle. They get stuck in small blood vessels. They block the flow of blood. And when that happens, it causes episodes of extreme pain. Doctors call them crises. The people who live through them call them something else entirely. Treatment exists. A medication called hydroxyurea can reduce the frequency and severity of crises, but it is not cheap, and for someone without insurance, the cost of managing sickle cell disease can range from $10,000 to $30,000 a year. That is not including emergency room visits. That is not including hospital stays during severe crises. That is just the medication and the regular checkups. Many families face an impossible choice. Pay for the medication or pay the rent. Fill the prescription or fill the refrigerator. The disease does not care about your bank account. It comes when it comes. He needs his medication every month, Denise continued. She had picked the mop back up. She was working while she talked, wringing the rag, wiping the counter. Her hands never stopped. Hydroxyurea. It helps. Keeps the bad days from coming so often. But every now and then he gets a crisis anyway. And when that happens, we end up in the ER. Same ER downstairs. Same waiting room. She did not say how much it cost. She did not need to. The way she said, same waiting room, told Clarence everything. She had sat in those blue plastic chairs herself. Not as an employee. As a mother. Waiting, hoping, counting the minutes. I work here, and I work at a laundry place across town. Mornings, they're evenings here. Tyrone stays with my neighbor after school till I get home. He does his homework on his own, never complains. She shook her head. That boy never complains. She was not asking for sympathy. She was not telling a sad story. She was just telling the truth, the way someone tells you about their commute or their grocery list. This was her life. She had lived it so long that the weight of it no longer showed on her face. It lived in her hands instead, in the way they moved without stopping, in the calluses on her palms from chemicals and mop handles and years of work that never ended. Clarence sat very still. He did not trust his voice. There was a knot in his throat that he could not swallow past. This woman stood in his hospital every night cleaning floors that no one thanked her for cleaning. And during the day she folded other people's laundry so she could afford to keep her son alive. He sounds like a good kid, Clarence said. It was all he could manage. Denise smiled again, that same smile. He's the best thing I ever did. She finished the room, tucked the mop onto the cart, straightened the spray bottles, everything in its place. You need anything before I go? No, thank you, Denise. She gave a small nod and pushed the cart toward the door. Halfway out, she looked back over her shoulder. They should be discharging you soon. Don't let them keep you here all day. You got a life to get back to. The door swung shut behind her. The room smelled like clean floors and lemon disinfectant. Clarence sat on the bed. He looked at the blanket she had given him. He looked at the empty container still sitting on the bedside table, the one with D. Patterson written in marker on the bottom. He thought about a boy named Tyrone who wanted to build bridges and a mother who worked 2 jobs so he could keep dreaming. And he thought about how strange it was that the person with the least power in this entire building was the only one who had treated him like he mattered. Denise was wiping down the windowsill when her phone buzzed. She pulled it from her pocket, looked at the screen. Her whole body changed in an instant. Not dramatically, not the way it happens in movies. It was smaller than that. Her shoulders pulled inward. Her jaw tightened. Her free hand gripped the edge of the windowsill like she needed something solid to hold on to. She answered, "Hey, baby." The voice on the other end was thin, young, the kind of voice that was trying very hard to sound okay and failing. Clarence could not hear the words, but he could hear the tone. It was the tone of someone in pain. Denise closed her eyes. "Where does it hurt your chest? Okay, listen to me. Drink some water. Take your meds. The bottle is on the kitchen counter, next to the microwave. You see it." A pause. "Good. Take 2. Then lie down on the couch, not your bed. The couch so Miss Ruthie can check on you when she comes by. I'll be home soon, baby. I promise." She hung up. Her hand stayed on the phone for a long moment. Thumb pressed against the dark screen like she was trying to hold onto the connection a little longer. She turned away from Clarence, faced the window. Her reflection was barely visible in the glass. She took one breath. Slow, deep. The kind of breath a person takes when they are putting themselves back together one piece at a time. Clarence watched her. He said nothing for a moment. Then quietly, "Is everything okay?" Denise turned around. She was smiling. But Clarence knew that smile. He had worn it himself. It was the smile of a person who has been carrying something heavy for so long that they have learned how to make it look like nothing at all. "Just my boy," she said. "He gets these episodes. It comes and goes. He'll be fine." Her voice said fine. Her hands said something else. They were shaking. Not a lot, just a tremor in her fingers as she picked the mop back up. She squeezed the handle hard and the shaking stopped. Or, at least, it became invisible. She went back to work, faster now. The mop moved in quicker strokes. She wiped the counter without pausing to check if it was clean. She straightened the spray bottles on her cart without looking at them. Everything about her pace said, "I need to leave. I need to get home." But she was still here. Because her shift was not over. Because if she left early, she would lose hours. And if she lost hours, the next paycheck would be short. And if the paycheck was short, something would not get paid. The medication, the electricity, the bus pass. So she stayed, she cleaned, and she smiled. Clarence sat on the bed and watched her push the cart toward the door. She moved quickly, efficiently. A woman running a race against a clock that no one else could see. Denise. She stopped, looked back. "I hope your boy feels better." Something flickered in her face. Just for a half second. A crack in the armor. Then it closed. She nodded. "Thank you, sir." He always bounces back. He's tough like that. The door closed behind her. The room went quiet. Clarence sat very still. He was no longer thinking about the hospital. He was no longer thinking about the nurses, or the doctor, or the waiting room, or the system. For the first time since he walked through those doors, Clarence Whitfield was thinking about one person, a woman who mopped floors and packed her own dinner and worked 2 jobs and answered the phone in the middle of a shift to talk her 16-year-old son through a pain crisis from 40 minutes away because she could not be there to hold him. And she had smiled. She had smiled and said he would be fine. That was the moment the story changed. Not with a dramatic reveal or a sudden twist. It changed quietly. In a hospital room that smelled like lemon cleaner, with the sound of cart wheels fading down the hallway, and a man sitting alone on a bed realizing that the person who needed saving was not him, the second night was worse. Clarence had drifted in and out of a shallow sleep. The monitor beside him beeped in a steady rhythm that should have been comforting but was not. The room was cold. The blanket Denise had given him was still draped over his legs, but the chill came from somewhere deeper. Just after 10, the pain returned. It started low, a dull ache behind his sternum, the same place as before. He breathed through it, told himself it was stress, told himself it would pass. It did not pass. The ache sharpened. It spread across his chest like a hand pressing down, then moved into his left arm. His fingers tingled. His breathing got tight, short, like his lungs could only fill halfway before something stopped them. He reached for the call button on the side rail, found it, pressed it. A small light blinked on above his door. He waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3. Nobody came. He pressed it again. Held it down this time as if pressing harder would make someone care faster. The light blinked. The hallway stayed empty. 5 minutes. 7, 10. Clarence pulled himself to the edge of the bed. His legs felt heavy. His feet hit the cold floor, and the shock of it made him gasp. He stood, barely. One hand on the bed, rail the other against the wall. He shuffled toward the door. The hallway stretched out in front of him. Long, dim. The overhead lights were set to their nighttime setting, casting everything in a flat yellow glow. Half the bulbs flickered. The floor was clean. Denise had mopped it hours ago. He moved along the wall. One hand flat against the surface. Step by step, his heart was pounding. Not the normal kind. It was skipping, jumping. Like a drummer who had lost the beat and could not find it again. The nurse's station was 30 feet away. He could see it. 2 figures behind the counter. One was Brenda. She had her earbuds in. Her phone was propped against a stack of folders playing something with bright colors. A show, a video. Something that was not a patient. "Help," Clarence said. His voice came out weaker than he expected. Brenda looked up. She saw him, standing in the hallway, leaning against the wall. An old man in a hospital gown with no insurance and no name that mattered. She pulled out one earbud. "Sir, you should be in your room. Something is wrong. My chest, my heart. It feels wrong." Brenda glanced at her colleague. Her colleague did not look up. "Go back to your room. I'll send someone to check on you. Please. Now, something is really wrong. Sir." Her voice was firm. Not unkind exactly, but firm in the way that people speak when they have already decided what category you belong to. "Go back to your room. Someone will be there shortly." Clarence turned. He made it 4 steps. Then his legs buckled. He did not fall hard. He slid. His back went against the wall, and he slid down until he was sitting on the tile floor, his knees bent, his hands flat on the cold surface, his chest heaving. Here is a fact that most people do not know. In many hospitals across America, the time it takes for a nurse to respond to a call button varies dramatically depending on where the patient is located. Patients in private rooms and high-priority wards receive responses within 3 to 5 minutes on average. Patients in low-priority sections, the overflow rooms, the uninsured wards, the hallways that do not get visited by administrators often wait 3 to 4 times longer. In some cases, the call goes unanswered entirely. This is not a failure of individual nurses. It is a failure of systems that assign value to human beings based on how much revenue they generate. The rooms closest to the nurse's station get the fastest care. The rooms farthest away get the least. And the distance between those rooms is not measured in feet. It is measured in dollars. Clarence sat on the floor, his back against the wall, his heartbeat erratic. 20 minutes passed. He thought about Lorraine. He thought about her lying in a bed just like the one he had left, pressing a button just like the one he had pressed, waiting for someone just like he was waiting now. He closed his eyes. The hallway hummed with the sound of ventilation and distant machines. Then he heard it. Footsteps, fast, the sharp squeak of rubber soles on wet tile, coming from the stairwell at the end of the corridor. Getting closer. "Sir, sir." He opened his eyes. Denise was running toward him. She was not supposed to be on this floor. She had been cleaning 2 floors up. But she had heard something. A cough. A sound that carried through the quiet hallway. And she had come. She dropped to her knees beside him. Her cleaning gloves were still on. She pulled them off and pressed 2 fingers to the side of his neck. Her touch was firm, practiced. She had done this before. Not in a hospital training session. In her own living room, on her own son, during nights when no one else was there. "Sir, look at me. Can you breathe? Tell me what you feel." "My chest," Clarence whispered. "It's skipping. My heart. It feels like it's skipping." Denise kept her fingers on his pulse. She counted. Her lips moved silently. After 10 seconds, she pulled her hand away. "Your pulse is fast. And it's not regular. We need to get you to a monitor. Can you stand?" He could not. Not on his own. Denise braced her shoulder under his arm and lifted. She was not a big woman, but she was strong in the way that people are strong when they have spent years carrying things heavier than themselves. She got him upright, walked him to the nurse's station. Brenda was still behind the counter. "There is a patient on the floor in C12. He needs help. Now." Brenda stood up, slowly. "What happened?" He collapsed in the hallway. "His pulse is irregular. He needs a cardiac monitor, and he needs a doctor." Brenda reached for the phone. She was taking her time. Denise did not wait. She walked past the station, found a wheelchair in the supply alcove, brought it back and helped Clarence into it. She wheeled him down the corridor to the monitoring room, a room with machines that could read what his heart was doing. She pressed the emergency call button on the wall. The on-call physician arrived in 4 minutes. Not Dr. Cross, a younger doctor. She checked his vitals, ran a quick EKG, and within seconds her face changed. "He's in atrial fibrillation. We need to stabilize him now." Atrial fibrillation. It is one of the most common heart rhythm disorders in the world. What happens is this: the upper chambers of the heart begin beating out of sync with the lower chambers. Instead of a steady, coordinated pumping motion, the heart quivers. It trembles. It moves blood inefficiently. And if it goes untreated, it can cause a blood clot, a clot that travels to the brain, a stroke. In elderly patients, it can happen fast. Minutes matter. If Denise had not come down those stairs, if she had not heard that cough, if she had not checked his pulse with the same hands that she used to check her son's pulse on the worst nights of his life, Clarence Whitfield might not have made it to morning. The doctor worked quickly. Medication through an IV line. A monitor clipped to his finger. Wires taped to his chest. The beeping stabilized, slowly, beat by beat. The rhythm found its way back. Clarence lay on the bed. His eyes were open. The room was bright. Machines hummed around him. The doctor wrote notes. A nurse, not Brenda, adjusted the IV drip. And beside him, sitting in a plastic chair she had pulled from the corner, was Denise. She had not been asked to stay. She had no medical reason to be there. Her shift had nothing to do with cardiac monitoring or IV medication or emergency protocols. She was the cleaning lady. But she was there. She reached over and took his hand. Her palm was rough, calloused from years of chemicals and mop handles and hot water and work that never stopped. Her fingers curled around his gently. "The way you hold something fragile. The way you hold something that matters. You're going to be okay, sir. I'm right here." Clarence looked at her hand holding his. He did not speak. He did not need to. He just held on. The room settled. 3 in the morning. The kind of hour that belongs to nobody. Too late for night, too early for day. A hollow in-between time when hospitals go so quiet you can hear the building itself breathing. Clarence was stable. The monitor beside him beeped in a steady rhythm now. The medication had done its work. His heart had found its pace again like a clock that someone had wound back to the correct speed. But he was awake, wide awake. The kind of awake that comes after your body has been genuinely afraid. He turned his head. Denise was still there. She sat in the plastic chair beside his bed, her legs crossed at the ankles, her hands in her lap. She was wiping her fingers with a damp cloth, one at a time, slowly. The chemical smell of cleaning solution clung to her skin even after she scrubbed. "You're still here," he said. She looked up. "I wanted to make sure you were all right. My shift ended an hour ago. You should go home. Your son. My neighbor is with him, Miss Ruthie. She stays over when I work late. Tyrone knows the routine." She folded the cloth into a small square, set it on her knee. "He texted me 30 minutes ago. Said the pain went down. He's sleeping now." Clarence studied her face. She looked tired. Not the tired of someone who needed sleep, the tired of someone who had been tired for years and had stopped noticing. "Denise." "Yes, sir." "Why do you do this? Sitting here, bringing me food, checking on patients in the middle of the night. None of this is your job." She did not answer right away. She unfolded the cloth, refolded it. A small, nervous habit that said she was deciding how much to share. When Tyrone was 4, she began, her voice low and steady. He had his first real crisis, sickle cell. "Do you know what that looks like in a child?" Clarence shook his head. His whole body locked up, every muscle, every joint. He screamed for 3 hours straight, not crying, screaming. The kind of scream that comes from a place so deep inside a child that you don't even know it exists until you hear it. They gave him morphine. It barely touched it. They gave him fluids. They gave him everything they had. And then they left, because there were other patients, other rooms, other emergencies, and a 4-year-old boy with sickle cell in a hospital bed was just another case on the board. She paused. Her eyes were focused on something that was not in the room, something 12 years away. I sat with him all night, alone, no family nearby. My mother had passed the year before. His father was gone long before that. It was just me and this little boy screaming into a pillow because he couldn't scream anymore, and the nurses had stopped coming. Clarence did not move. He barely breathed. Around 2 in the morning, a woman came into the room. I didn't know her name. She wore a cleaning uniform, same as mine. She had a mop and a bucket. She looked at Tyrone. She looked at me. And she didn't say, "I'm sorry." She didn't say, "It'll be okay." She set her mop against the wall, walked out, and came back 5 minutes later with a warm blanket and a cup of coffee. Denise's voice softened. Not to a whisper, just to the register where words become more careful, more precise, like they are being placed instead of spoken. She wrapped that blanket around Tyrone, tucked it under his chin. Then she handed me the coffee, and she said, "Mama, you eat too. You can't take care of him if you fall apart." The room was very still. The monitor beeped. Once, twice. That woman didn't have a medical degree. She didn't have a fancy title or a white coat. She had a mop and a kind heart, and she saved me that night. Denise looked at Clarence. Her eyes were clear. Not tearful. Clear in the way that truth is clear, when someone has lived with it long enough to stop being broken by it. Not my son. Me. She saved me. Because I was falling apart and nobody else noticed. She smoothed the cloth on her knee one more time. So, when I see someone alone in this hospital, sitting in a cold room, no blanket, no food, nobody checking on them, I think of myself sitting in that chair 12 years ago, watching my baby hurt and feeling like the whole world had forgotten we existed. And I do what that woman did for me. Because it mattered. It was the only thing that mattered that whole night. Clarence stared at the ceiling. His eyes burned. Not from pain, from something much older than pain. A hot, quiet pressure behind his eyelids that he had not felt since the day he held Lorraine's hand for the last time. He blinked. Once. A single tear rolled down the side of his face and disappeared into the thin hospital pillow. In the dim light of the room, Denise could not see it. And that was fine. Some things do not need to be seen. They just need to be felt. She stood up after a while, gathered her cloth, tucked it into her pocket. "You get some rest, sir. I'll check on you in the morning." Denise. She stopped at the door. "Thank you," she smiled. A small one. The kind that lives in the corners of the mouth and does not try to be more than what it is. "You don't have to thank me, Eugene. It's just what you do." The door closed. The room went dark. And Clarence lay there in a hospital bed connected to machines that measured his heartbeat, thinking about a woman who measured her life not in dollars or titles, but in cups of coffee and warm blankets and the simple, stubborn refusal to let another human being suffer alone. Morning light crept into the room through the half-closed blinds, gray and thin, the kind of light that does not warm anything. Clarence had slept in short stretches, waking each time the monitor beeped a little differently than before. He was sitting up now, propped against 2 flat pillows, eating what the hospital called breakfast: a piece of white bread, a small carton of milk, a cup of orange juice that tasted like it had been mixed from powder 3 days ago. He heard the voice before he saw the person. It came from the hallway. Sharp, the kind of voice that belonged to someone who was used to being obeyed. Not loud, but cutting. The words carried through the open door like they had edges. "Patterson, come here!" Clarence turned his head. Through the doorway he could see a section of the hallway. A man in a gray polo shirt with a lanyard around his neck was standing near the supply closet. Terrence Holt, facilities manager. Clarence knew the name. He had approved the hiring 2 years ago, but he had never met the man in person. Denise walked over. Her cart was behind her. She had just started her evening shift. "This floor," Holt said. He pointed at the ground. "There's a stain near C14. It's been there since this morning. You were on last night." "Why wasn't it handled? I was helping a patient," Denise said. Her voice was calm. "Even in C12. He collapsed in the hallway. I had to assist until the doctor arrived." Holt stared at her. His expression did not change. It was the expression of someone who had already decided what the correct answer was before the question was asked. "That is not your job, Patterson. You are custodial staff. When a patient has a medical issue, you call a nurse. You don't play doctor." Nobody was responding to his call button. "I checked his pulse and got him to the monitoring room." The on-call doctor said, "If I hadn't." "I don't care what the doctor said." Holt's voice dropped. Not to a whisper. To the low register that some managers use when they want you to know you are being spoken to, not spoken with. "You are not trained to assess patients. You are not authorized to move patients. If something had gone wrong while you were wheeling him down the hall, this hospital would be liable." "Do you understand that?" Denise said nothing. "Your job is to clean floors, rooms, bathrooms. That is what you are paid for. Stay in your lane." She nodded. Once. Small. The nod of someone who had heard this before, who had learned that arguing did not change anything and only cost energy she could not afford to waste. She turned back to her cart, picked up the mop, walked toward room C14, and started cleaning the stain. In hospitals across America, there is an unspoken rule that workers at the bottom of the hierarchy are expected to stay within their defined roles. When a custodial worker, a kitchen aide, or a transport assistant steps outside their job description, even to help a patient, they risk disciplinary action. Researchers call it scope creep punishment. It happens because the system values liability management over patient outcomes. The question is, never did you help someone? The question is, were you authorized to help someone? And if the answer is no, the help itself becomes the problem. Denise mopped the stain in silence. She did not look back at Holt. She did not look toward Clarence's room. She just worked, head down, hands moving, the way she always worked, the way she had worked for 8 years. Clarence sat on the bed. His hands gripped the edge of the mattress so hard his knuckles went white. His jaw was clenched. His breathing was controlled but deliberate. The kind of breathing a person does when every cell in their body wants to do something and they are forcing themselves to stay still. He wanted to walk into that hallway. He wanted to stand in front of Terrence Holt and say 4 words: "I own this hospital." He wanted to watch the color drain from that man's face. He wanted to end this right now, right here, with one sentence that would change everything, but he did not. Because if he revealed himself now, Holt would be fired. One person, one consequence. And then what? The system would adjust. Someone else would take Holt's place. The same rules would apply. The same hierarchy would hold. The same people would be told to stay in their lane. Clarence did not want to fix one moment. He wanted to fix the entire machine. So he sat. He watched Denise mop the floor through the open door. He watched her shoulders straight and steady doing the work she was punished for pausing. And he made a decision. Not a loud one. Not the kind of decision that comes with speeches or confrontations. A quiet one. The kind that forms in the space between a clenched fist and a slow exhale. He reached for the prepaid phone on the bedside table. He typed one message to Calvin. Set up a board meeting. The day I get out. Everyone in that room. He put the phone down, pulled the blanket over his legs, and waited. They discharged him just after 2 in the afternoon. A nurse he had not seen before handed him a plastic bag with his old clothes inside and a single sheet of paper with discharge instructions. Take the prescribed medication. Follow up with a primary care physician. Avoid stressful situations. The instructions were printed in a font so small that a man his age would need reading glasses to make sense of them. Clarence changed in the bathroom. He pulled on the worn jeans, the faded jacket, the scuffed boots. He looked at himself in the mirror above the sink. Eugene stared back at him, tired, older than he remembered. There were shadows under his eyes that had not been there 3 days ago. He folded the hospital gown and left it on the bed, neatly, the way Lorraine used to fold things. Corners matched, edges straight, a habit he had picked up from her without realizing it until she was gone. Before he left, he walked to the 3rd floor. He did not take the elevator. He took the stairs, slowly. His chest still ached, but the medication had brought his heart back into rhythm, and the ache was manageable now. A dull reminder, not a threat. He found her in room 321. Denise was on her knees, scrubbing the base of a toilet with a brush. Her cart was parked in the hallway. The radio on her belt was turned low, playing something soft that he could not quite hear. He knocked on the open door. She looked up, smiled. "Eugene, you're leaving. They finally let me go." She stood up, pulled off one glove to wipe her forehead with the back of her hand. "Good. You look better. You got some strength back." Clarence stood in the doorway. He looked at this woman, kneeling on a bathroom floor in a hospital that bore his name, scrubbing porcelain with a brush that had seen better days, wearing a uniform that was 2 shades lighter than it was supposed to be because she had washed it so many times. And she was smiling at him, genuinely. The way you smile at someone you are glad to see. "Thank you, Denise, for everything." She waved her hand. The glove flapped loosely on her wrist. "Oh, stop. Just doing what anyone would do, sir." "No, not anyone. Just you." He did not say it out loud. The word stayed inside him in the place where the things that matter most live. The place that does not need a voice to be heard? You take care of yourself, Eugene, and go see a doctor. A real one. Don't let them give you a list and send you home. I will. And eat something. Real food, not that mess they serve downstairs. He almost smiled. Almost. "I will." She nodded, pulled her glove back on, got back down on her knees, and went back to work. Clarence walked down the stairs, through the lobby, past the reception desk, where no one looked up, through the automatic doors that opened with the same soft hiss they had made when he walked in 72 hours ago. The air hit him. Cold, December cold. The kind that finds the gaps in your clothing and settles into your bones. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, just breathing. Calvin was parked across the street in the plain sedan. He saw Clarence and started the engine, pulled up to the curb, got out, opened the passenger door. "Sir, are you all right?" Clarence did not answer. He was not looking at Calvin. He was looking up. Above the main entrance, mounted on the face of the building, were the letters. White against dark stone, lit from below by spotlights that were already glowing in the early winter dusk. Whitfield Memorial Hospital. His name, his money, his legacy. He had built this place to save people. And for 3 days, he had watched it fail. Not because the equipment was broken, not because the doctors were incompetent, not because the funding was insufficient. It failed because somewhere between the blueprints and the building, between the mission statement and the daily shifts, the thing that mattered most had been lost. The simple act of seeing another human being and choosing to care. One person in that entire building had not lost it. One person, the one who was paid the least, valued the least, and listened to the least. Clarence lowered his eyes, looked at Calvin, set up a board meeting. Tomorrow morning, 8 sharp. Everyone, board members, department heads, the hospital director, every name on the leadership chart. I want them all in that room. Calvin studied his face. He had worked for Clarence long enough to know the difference between an order and a request. This was neither. This was something else. Something that came from a place deeper than business. "Yes, sir." Clarence got into the car. Calvin closed the door, walked around to the driver's side, started the engine. As the sedan pulled away from the curb, Clarence turned his head and watched the building shrink in the side mirror. The letters of his name grew smaller, the lights dimmed. But the weight of what he had seen, what he had felt, what he had learned on that cold bathroom floor and in that dark hallway and in the quiet of a 3 a.m. conversation with a woman who had nothing but gave everything that weight did not shrink. It grew. And he carried it with him all the way home. The boardroom on the 14th floor of Whitfield Tower had floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the Richmond skyline. A long mahogany table ran down the center. 18 leather chairs. A projector screen at the far end. Fresh water and coffee at every seat. It was the kind of room where decisions worth millions were made every week. By 8:15 the next morning, every chair was filled. Board members in pressed suits. The hospital director, a woman named Sandra Cole with a folder of quarterly reports in front of her. Dr. Raymond Cross, sitting upright, pen in hand. Nurse Brenda Hayes, looking uncomfortable, unsure why she had been summoned. Terrence Holt, the facilities manager, checking his phone under the table. Nobody spoke. The energy in the room was tight. They had all received the same message the night before. Mandatory meeting. No agenda provided. Attendance non-negotiable. The door opened. Clarence walked in. He wore a dark gray suit. No tie. His face was calm. Rested but not relaxed. There was something behind his eyes that the people in this room had never seen before. Not anger exactly. Something colder. Something more deliberate. He did not sit down. He walked to the head of the table and stood there, hands at his sides. He looked at every face in the room one by one. Slowly. The way a man looks at something he is about to take apart. 72 hours ago, he said, I checked into Whitfield Memorial Hospital. I gave my name as Eugene. I had no insurance, no identification, no emergency contact. I walked into the emergency room as a 68-year-old black man with chest pains and nothing else. The room went still. Sandra Cole lowered her folder. Cross put down his pen. Holt stopped touching his phone. I waited over an hour before anyone acknowledged me. When a nurse finally took my vitals, she did not look me in the eye. She did not ask follow-up questions when I described my symptoms. She sent me to a room at the far end of the hall, a room with a stained sheet and a flickering light. Brenda's face changed. The color left it slowly, like water draining from a sink. A doctor examined me the next morning. He reviewed my chart, told me nothing was alarming, and gave me a referral list for community clinics. He did not explain my test results. He did not ask if I understood my condition. He was in and out of the room in under 4 minutes. Cross opened his mouth, then closed it. On my second night, I experienced an episode of atrial fibrillation. I pressed the call button. No one came. I pressed it again. No one came. I made it into the hallway before my legs gave out. I sat on the floor of my own hospital for 20 minutes before anyone helped me. He paused. Let the silence do its work. The person who found me was not a nurse. She was not a doctor. She was a cleaning lady. She checked my pulse. She got me into a wheelchair. She wheeled me to the monitoring room herself because the nurse on duty could not be bothered to stand up. The on-call physician told me later that if this woman had not intervened, I could have had a stroke. Sandra Cole's hand was over her mouth. She was not breathing. And the next morning, the facilities manager reprimanded her, in front of patients, for helping me. He told her to stay in her lane. Holt's face went white, dead white. The kind of white that comes when a man realizes his own words are about to be read back to him by the person who signs his paycheck. Cross leaned forward. Mr. Whitfield, with all due respect, everything that was done followed established protocol. The triage process, the discharge procedures, the referral system, all of it was within standard medical guidelines. Clarence looked at him. He did not blink. And my wife died under your protocols, Dr. Cross, 3 years ago, in this hospital, following every guideline, every procedure, every standard. She pressed the call button. She told the nurse something was wrong. The nurse wrote in her chart that she was anxious. 6 hours later, she bled to death internally. The room was so quiet that Clarence could hear the coffee machine humming in the corner. Protocols do not hold your hand at 3 in the morning. Protocols do not share their dinner with a stranger. Protocols do not run down a stairwell because they heard someone coughing in a hallway. He placed both hands flat on the table. One person in this entire hospital treated me like a human being. One. And she is the one this institution pays the least and respects the least. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The coffee grew cold in every cup. 2 floors below Denise Patterson was mopping the hallway outside room 214. It was a Tuesday. Her shift had started 30 minutes ago. She had already cleaned 3 rooms and restocked the supply closet on the east wing. Routine. The same work she had done every evening for 8 years. She heard footsteps behind her. Fast. She turned. Terrence Holt was walking toward her. His face was different. She had never seen that expression on him before. Not anger, not authority. Something closer to fear. Patterson. You need to come with me. Denise gripped the mop handle. Her stomach dropped. She had been expecting this. Ever since the night she helped the patient in C12, she had been waiting for the consequence. Helping him was outside her scope. Holt had already warned her once. She figured this was the second warning. Or worse. Am I in trouble? She asked. Holt did not answer. The boardroom, 14th floor. Now, she had never been to the 14th floor. She did not even know there was a boardroom up there. She leaned the mop against the wall, wiped her hands on her uniform, and followed Holt to the elevator. She was still holding her rubber gloves. She had not thought to put them down. They dangled from her left hand like something she had forgotten to let go of. The elevator doors opened. The hallway was wide, carpeted, quiet in a way that the rest of the hospital never was. No beeping, no announcements, no crying. Just the soft hum of air conditioning and the distant murmur of voices behind a heavy door. Holt opened the door for her. She stepped inside. The room was enormous. Bigger than any room she had ever worked in. A long table stretched from one end to the other, surrounded by leather chairs, filled with people in suits. She recognized a few faces. Dr. Cross, the hospital director, Nurse Brenda. She did not recognize the others. They all looked at her. She became suddenly painfully aware of herself. Her uniform, the faded blue, the chemical smell on her hands, the rubber gloves she was still clutching. She stood in the doorway like someone who had walked into the wrong building and was waiting for someone to tell her to leave. A man at the head of the table stood up. Tall, gray suit, no tie. He looked familiar, but she could not place him. Something about his eyes, something about the way he stood. He walked toward her. Slowly. The room was silent. Every person at the table watched him move. He stopped 3 feet in front of her. Hello, Denise. She blinked. She looked at his face, his hands, the way he held his shoulders. Something clicked. Something deep in her memory. A voice in a dark room. A pair of eyes looking up at her from a hospital bed. A man who had no one. You might not recognize me, he said. But 3 nights ago you sat beside my bed at 3 in the morning and held my hand. You shared your dinner with me. Rice and chicken in a plastic container with your name taped on the bottom. You brought me a blanket when no one else noticed I was cold. You called me sir when no one else even looked at me. Denise's lips parted. Her breath caught. The rubber gloves slipped from her fingers and fell to the carpet without a sound. Eugene. My real name is Clarence Whitfield. He let the words land, one by one, like stones dropped into still water. I own this hospital. The room did not move. 18 people sitting in leather chairs, and not one of them made a sound. Denise stared at him. Her eyes widened. Not in fear. In something much more complicated than fear. The kind of shock that comes when the world you thought you knew rearranges itself in front of you in a single sentence. She took 1 step back, looked down at the rubber gloves on the floor, looked at her hands, the calluses, the dry skin, the short fingernails she kept trimmed because long nails snagged on cleaning rags. She looked back at Clarence, at his suit, at the room, at the people. She did not speak. Clarence turned to face the table. His voice was steady, not raised, not emotional, just clear the way truth sounds when it does not need volume to be heard. This woman is the only person in this building who treated me like a human being. She brought me food from her own lunch when the hospital had not fed me. She brought me a blanket when no one assigned me one. She checked on me when no nurse responded to my call. She found me on the floor of the hallway during a cardiac episode, checked my pulse with her bare hands, and got me to a monitoring room when the medical staff on duty could not be bothered to leave their station. He looked at Denise. She did none of this because it was in her job description. She did it because that is who she is. Because 12 years ago, a woman with a mop and a cup of coffee showed her that kindness is not a job title. It is a choice. And Denise Patterson has been making that choice every single night in this hospital for 8 years, while the rest of us followed protocols. Denise stood very still. Her chin trembled. Once. Just once. Then it stopped. She pressed her lips together. Her eyes were bright, but she did not cry. Not yet. She was holding it. The way she always held things. Quietly. With everything she had. The room remained silent. Brenda was looking at the table. Cross was looking at his hands. Holt was looking at nothing. Clarence walked back to where Denise's gloves had fallen. He picked them up, gently, held them for a moment, then handed them back to her. "You won't be needing these much longer," he said softly. "But I wanted you to have them, because they are proof of who you are." Denise took the gloves, held them against her chest with both hands, like they were something precious, like they were made of something far more valuable than rubber. Clarence turned back to the room. He was not finished. "I did not come here today to punish anyone," he said. "I came here to fix something, and I am going to tell you exactly how." He walked to the projector screen, pressed a button on the remote. A single slide appeared. 3 lines of text, nothing else. Effective immediately, this hospital will launch a mandatory program called the Whitfield Patient Dignity Initiative. Every employee in this building, from surgeons to security guards, will complete a training course on patient dignity and equitable care. Not a seminar, not a webinar you click through in 20 minutes. A real program, ongoing, evaluated, with consequences for failure and recognition for excellence. He looked at Denise. "And the person who will lead this program is standing right there." Denise blinked. Her mouth opened slightly. No sound came out. Denise Patterson will serve as the Patient Advocate Director of Whitfield Memorial Hospital. She will oversee the design, delivery, and evaluation of the entire initiative. She will have an office, a staff, a salary that reflects the importance of the work, and she will report directly to me. Sandra Cole leaned forward. "Mr. Whitfield, with respect, she has no formal training in—" "She has 8 years of training," Clarence said. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. 8 years of walking into rooms where patients were ignored. 8 years of listening when nobody else would. 8 years of doing what this entire leadership team failed to do. She does not need a degree in hospital administration. She needs what she already has, the ability to see people. He paused. "Let the room absorb it. I am not giving her this position as a reward. I am giving it to her because she is the most qualified person in this building for the job. She knows what patients experience because she has been standing in those rooms, invisible, watching it happen every single night. No one on this board can say the same." Denise stood very still. Her hands were at her sides. The rubber gloves were tucked into her pocket now. She was listening with her whole body, the way someone listens when the words being spoken are rearranging the shape of their life. Clarence pressed the remote again. A second slide. Denise has a son, Tyrone Patterson, 16 years old. He has sickle cell disease. He requires ongoing treatment, including monthly medication and emergency care during crises. His mother works 2 jobs to pay for his medical expenses because the employee insurance plan at this hospital does not cover dependents. He let that sit. Several board members shifted in their seats. Starting today, Tyrone will receive full treatment through the hematology department at Whitfield Memorial. All costs will be covered by the Whitfield Foundation. This is not charity. This is a failure of our system. We employ this woman. We depend on her labor. And her son cannot access the care that this building provides because we did not build our benefits to protect the people who keep this hospital running. That ends now. In America, there are hundreds of thousands of workers like Denise inside hospitals: custodial staff, kitchen workers, transport aides, patient sitters. They are the people who spend the most time in patient rooms. They are the first to notice when someone is in pain, when someone is scared, when someone has been left alone too long. And yet they are paid the least, consulted the least, and valued the least. Research has consistently shown that the presence and attitude of non-clinical staff directly affects patient recovery times, satisfaction scores, and even readmission rates. These workers are not on the margins of healthcare. They are at the center of it. The system just refuses to see them there. Clarence pressed the remote one final time. A third slide. One name: Lorraine Whitfield. The room went completely silent. 3 years ago, my wife died in this hospital. She was not treated poorly because she lacked insurance. She was treated poorly because the culture of this institution had already begun to decay long before I noticed. I built this hospital to save lives, and it failed the one life that mattered most to me. His voice did not crack, but it slowed. Each word arrived with weight. I am establishing the Lorraine Whitfield Fund. It will provide direct financial support to uninsured patients at all 14 Whitfield Medical Group hospitals. Not referral lists, not pamphlets, real assistance, medication, follow-up care, emergency coverage. The fund will be managed by a dedicated board, and Denise Patterson will serve on that board, because she understands what it means to sit in a waiting room with no money and no hope and no one who cares whether you live or die. He turned to Denise. Denise, I want you to know something. I have run businesses for over 40 years. I have hired executives and fired executives. I have built buildings and closed buildings. And in all of that time, I have never met anyone who changed the way I see the world in 3 days. You did. Not because you did anything extraordinary, but because you did the most ordinary thing in the world. You were kind, and in a building full of people whose job it is to care for others, you were the only one who actually did. Denise pressed her lips together. Her chin trembled. Her eyes filled. She did not wipe them. She let the tears come. 2 of them, slow, rolling down her cheeks and falling onto the collar of her faded blue uniform. She was not crying because of the job title. She was not crying because of the money or the office or the fund. She was crying because for 8 years she had walked the halls of this hospital doing things that nobody asked her to do, things that nobody noticed, things that nobody thanked her for. And for the first time in all those years, someone had looked at her and said the one thing she had never heard: what you do matters. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, took a breath, steadied herself, and then she did something no one in that room expected. She looked at Clarence Whitfield, the billionaire, the man who owned the building she cleaned, and she said in a voice that was quiet but unbroken, "I don't need a title to do what I do, sir. But if a title means I can help more people, then I'll take it." Clarence nodded, and for the first time in 3 days he smiled. 6 months later, the hallway on the 3rd floor of Whitfield Memorial Hospital looked the same. Same tile floors, same fluorescent lights, same faint smell of antiseptic and coffee. But something was different. Not in the walls, or the ceiling, or the furniture. In the air. In the way people moved through it. Denise Patterson walked down that hallway on a Tuesday morning. She wore a navy blazer over a white blouse. Her badge read Patient Advocate Director. Her office was on the 2nd floor next to the Patient Services Department. It had a window that looked out onto the parking lot. It was not a big office, but it was hers. Every Tuesday she led a workshop for new employees. All departments, nurses, technicians, cafeteria staff, custodial teams, security. The workshop was called "Every Patient is Someone's Family." It lasted 90 minutes. It was not optional. She started each session the same way. She told the story of a cleaning lady who once gave a cup of coffee to a mother sitting alone in a hospital room at 2 in the morning. She did not name the cleaning lady. She did not need to. The story spoke for itself. Research has shown that patient experience programs led by former patients or non-clinical staff are up to 60% more effective than those designed by hospital administrators. The reason is simple. They know what it feels like. Not from a textbook, not from a survey, from the chair, from the bed, from the hallway floor at midnight when nobody comes. Once a week, Denise still cleaned a patient room. She did not have to. It was not in her new job description. But she kept a pair of rubber gloves in the top drawer of her desk, the same pair, worn thin in the fingers, faded at the wrists. She put them on every Friday afternoon and mopped one room on the 3rd floor. When people asked her why, she always said the same thing. So I don't forget where I started. Tyrone was doing better. His treatment had stabilized. The crises came less often now, once every few months, instead of every few weeks. His hematologist had adjusted his medication, and the results were holding. He had been accepted into a STEM summer program at Virginia Tech. Engineering, bridges, the big kind, the kind that go over rivers and canyons. He talked about it the way 16-year-old boys talk about things they love, with his whole body hands, moving eyes bright. Denise visited the hospital every Wednesday now, not to clean, to sit in the boardroom on the 14th floor as a member of the Lorraine Whitfield Fund Advisory Council. She wore the same blazer. She brought the same plastic container for lunch. And every time she sat down in that leather chair, she set the container on the table in front of her. D. Patterson, written in black marker on a strip of masking tape. Dr. Raymond Cross was not fired. Clarence had made that decision deliberately. Firing him would have been easy. Too easy. Instead, Cross was required to complete the full patient dignity training program. 4 months. Weekly sessions, including one module where uninsured patients sat across the table from hospital staff and described their experiences. Cross resisted at first. He called it unnecessary. He said his clinical outcomes spoke for themselves. But something shifted during the 3rd week. A woman named Gloria, 54 years old, diabetic, no insurance, told the room about the time she sat in an emergency room for 7 hours with chest pains and was sent home with a pamphlet. She described the pamphlet in detail. The font, the clip art, the phone number that led to a voicemail that was never returned. Cross did not speak for the rest of that session. The next week, a colleague noticed something small. When Cross walked into a patient room, he started with a different question. Not, "What is your insurance?" Not, "What brings you in today?" He said, "How are you feeling?" It was a small change, but small changes are how broken things begin to heal. Nurse Brenda Hayes was placed on internal review and reassigned to the staff development department. She did not fight it. 3 weeks after the board meeting, she sent a letter to Clarence. It was short, 3 lines on plain white paper. The last line read, "I forgot why I became a nurse. I am trying to remember." Whitfield Memorial Hospital's patient satisfaction scores rose 34% in 6 months. The Patient Dignity Initiative was nominated for a statewide award in healthcare service improvement. 3 other hospital systems in Virginia requested access to the training materials. And on the wall of Denise Patterson's office next to the window that looked out onto the parking lot, there was a framed photograph. It was not an award. It was not a certificate. It was a picture of a plastic food container, scratched, old, with a strip of masking tape on the bottom. D. Patterson. Underneath it, in small handwriting, someone had written, "This is where it started." Kindness does not need a job title. It does not need permission. It does not need a budget or a board meeting or a degree on the wall. Sometimes, the person who changes everything is the one no one notices, the one mopping the floor at midnight, the one sharing their dinner with a stranger, the one who knocks before entering even when the door is already open. Denise Patterson was not a doctor. She was not a nurse. She was not an administrator. She was a woman with a mop and a kind heart, and she saved a man's life. Not because it was her job, because it was who she was. Now I want to speak to you directly for a moment, not as a narrator, as a person. I wrote this story because I have seen pieces of it happen in real life. Maybe not with a billionaire or a hospital boardroom, but in the small, quiet moments when someone chooses to be kind and no one is watching. I have been the person sitting in a waiting room feeling invisible, wondering if anyone noticed I was there. And I have also been the person who walked past someone who needed help and kept walking because I was busy or tired or just not paying attention. This story is a reminder, for me, and maybe for you too, that the smallest act of kindness, a blanket, a cup of coffee, a hand on someone's shoulder, can mean more than all the money in the world to someone who has been forgotten. This story is fictional. It was created for educational and inspirational purposes. However, the medical facts, the statistics, and the systemic issues described in this video, including diagnostic dismissal, triage bias, the EMTALA Act, sickle cell disease, compassion fatigue, and the referral gap, are real and well documented. If you or someone you know is affected by these issues, please seek appropriate medical and legal support. If this story moved you, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever experienced kindness from someone unexpected? Or have you been the person who showed kindness when no one asked you to? Share your story. And if you want more stories that remind us what it means to be human, subscribe and stay with us. Thank you for being here.